If you hire A players, they're going to improve the systems. Remember, what we are going to do is hire people smarter than us. And if we do that correctly, they will build the business better than we can.
Welcome to the Business of Influence. I'm Daniel Breez, founder of Measured Growth CPA, where we help online coaches and creators turn chaos into clarity and revenue into profit. Today's guest is Craig Ballantyne, author of The Perfect Week Formula and The Dark Side of Discipline, a coach to thousands and widely known as the world's most disciplined man. But in this conversation, we dive into the surprising flip side of that discipline: burnout, rigidity, and the hidden costs of following routines that don't actually serve your goals. We also dig into scaling your business beyond yourself, the mindset shifts every entrepreneur needs to make, and how to set up systems so strong that you're no longer the bottleneck. Craig's not just here to hype cold plunges and morning routines. He's here to challenge what real discipline looks like and how to build a business and life that you don't need to escape from. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Business of Influence. I'm Daniel Breez, founder of Measured Growth CPA. Today, I'm honored to chat with Craig Ballantyne. Craig, thank you for being here.
This is going to be so much fun. I'm super excited for this.
Well, I'd love to start with the book.
Yeah, totally.
I came across your work for the first time when you wrote The Perfect Week Formula.
Nice.
And I remember reading it on the beach. I even messaged you or I tagged you in a comment, and I was looking through our Instagram messages and I saw that you responded. So I thought that was super cool. This book's a little bit different. I've actually had my own struggles with discipline because there was a time in my life where I was trying to be super rigid.
Yeah.
And it didn't necessarily correspond to the goals that I had, but I also felt like if I didn't get my morning routine down to the T, I would feel like a failure, which was super stupid because if it didn't match my goals, I don't know why I needed to feel like a failure. But your book really does touch on that subject. And I'm wondering, what was the inspiration for the book? Was it something that you found in your own life or maybe your clients' lives?
Yeah, it was a bit of my own life. It's a good question. And a bit of my own life, but it was also in some of my clients' lives, people that I knew, friends of mine who just took it too far. They're like, I took it too far. I'll admit it. I admit it in the book because in order to write the book, you must first live the book. I took discipline. First of all, I must give discipline credit. Discipline was my savior when I was a binge drinker and socially anxious and introverted and, just not as good as I could be. Discipline got me up to the next level. But then I took discipline too far, too rigid, as you mentioned. I have had to do exercise every single day. I did 1,000 workouts in a row, and it's just, it's pointless. Like I wasn't getting any gold medals for working out every single day in a row. And in fact, probably got some overuse injuries from it. In my mind, I had to do it. And it's funny because discipline can put you in a prison of your own making. And the funniest thing of all is that the door is wide open and all you have to do is just walk out of it and let go. And when you do, that's when you have the freedom. Now, for some of my friends, man, they did not get out in time. They did not get out in time and they lost marriages. They certainly lost in business. They put their dreams off because they were letting the good get in the way of the great. And that sounds like what happened to you, Daniel, is that you let the good, the morning routine, the streak, the insistence upon doing things a certain way get in the way of the great, which is having the time to think big on the business and do the hardest work or even family time. I don't want, the reason why I wrote this book is I don't want people to let the good get in the way of the great. And the book is not about, hey, you watch too much television and eat too much junk food. Like, everybody who reads this book is already beyond that, but they are at the point where they're doing too many things because they see a lot of people doing things, other influencers. And, this is the business of influence. Use influence, but don't let influence be used on you is kind of the big message here, so that you make the right decisions for your life when it comes to discipline and when it comes to achieving your goals, setting your goals, pursuing your goals. You just have to step back and think. And that's what most people are skipping. And man, they end up in a world of hurt when they don't do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of trends nowadays happening, like the cold baths. I don't know in Vancouver if you're seeing a lot of those places pop up.
I just went for a walk today and someone was swimming in the ocean and it's March. And, I do it for fun once in a while. And they do have a lot of places you can go and flip between sauna and cold plunge. And my wife do that and I do that for date days, just for fun. We'll go to some of these things. But I don't have to do it every single day in order to be productive. Like that's just, it's not necessary nor is it sufficient. People were productive long before there were cold plunges. How on earth did anybody get anything done in the 1960s if they didn't have a cold plunge first thing in the morning? It's ridiculous to think that you have to do these things. They're wonderful things, but if you miss it, you can't be in a groove where you think, I got to get my mind right in the morning. I have to do the cold plunge because what if you can't do the cold plunge? Well, then, like, what are you going to have the worst day ever because you can't cold plunge because you have to cold plunge? Like,
Mm.
just get over yourself.
Yeah, your book reminded me a little bit about what Alex Hormozy talks about too. Um, if you need this elaborate morning routine just so you can become productive in your work, then I want you to be my competitor because I think the best routine would be get up. What's going to get me to get to the productive work the fastest, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. I go from getting up to working in about 5 minutes every single day and have for the last 15 years.
So that's like one
It's
105 in the morning.
it's pretty random. It's anywhere in between 3 and 4:15 because we have 3 kids and I don't
Yeah.
use an alarm clock anymore, but my body gets up at that time of day, and it has for about 10 years. So I need an alarm clock for about the first 3 years of it. And then it's just like, I don't know, sometimes a kid will get me up in the middle of the night and sometimes I go back to bed and sometimes I don't. And then, sometimes I just, I think today I woke up I was up a couple of times in the middle of the night with our son who's 7 months old. And I think I woke up at about 3:53 is when I got up today and I just went right to work.
No coffee?
I do make a coffee, but I usually start a little bit of work and then, about 15 or 20 minutes, I'll make like an espresso and that's about it.
Nice.
Yeah,
All right, I want to shift a little bit into the business side of things. You
totally.
work with a lot of coaches. I also work with coaches. You're a coach yourself. I'm on my way one day. Hopefully, we'll also have a coaching site in my business. For
Great,
now,
man.
we're focused on helping people make the accounting effortless.
Yeah, totally.
Well, one of the things that I see a lot of coaches struggle with, especially when they're trying to get to 1 million, is going from the coach themselves to becoming the operator of the business and maybe having other people deliver and fulfill the service. Is that something that you see people struggle with? And is that something that you, in your coaching, help them overcome?
Yeah, totally. And that goes for every business, right? So whether, we have people that are construction companies, we have people that are landscapers, we have real estate agents, we have everything in our business. And, I used to be heavily in the coaching space, but now I'm a little bit less. And also I come from the fitness world. So, we've owned gyms and I've had to get my business partner who ran the gym off the gym floor. And all of this comes down to the automation, delegation, and elimination that we teach, in the Perfect Week formula, but also in our coaching. Right? It's all about building systems. And so anybody listening, when you find yourself doing something more than once, that is a system, a system must be built for it, an operating procedure so that you don't do it again. And even when you're coaching, so when I started my coaching business, probably about 9 years ago, my first 3 one-on-one coaching clients, it was all the same stuff. So therefore all I did was I filmed a bunch of videos, and some of it became the Perfect Week formula book content. I just started filming videos. So before our first call, you're going to watch this thing before we get on our call so that we can get into more advanced stuff and skip this beginner stuff. And if you do that, then as you bring on coaches, you can train them in the system so that they understand like, hey, you're going to get the clients to go through this so that then they can come in and here are the questions you're going to ask them in the coaching. And the way that we have our coaching business now, I model it kind of after Tony Robbins certification, is that our coaches come in. I don't even train our coaches anymore. Our head coach trains our coaches, and all of our new clients come in and they're assigned to one of the other coaches. So that all I do now is really, I just show up at our mastermind meetings. I have a couple 100K clients a year. I don't really do any of the one-on-one calls anymore. We have some group calls that our other coaches do. And then I show up at our mastermind meetings every year. And, I work with our head coach to make sure that the agenda is perfect for our clients. I'm the person who, I make the sales videos and I help design the agenda, but everything is systematized. So if you think about any business, like think about a gym. If you're the owner of, just the first gym that came to my mind is Anatomy in Miami and South Beach. And I know the owner is Mark Magna, and, he doesn't train people. But he has like J-Lo goes to his gym, and J-Lo trains with one of the trainers that he has trained through their system to make all of their trainers amazing. And, you hire people with the right attitude, and you should have a playbook for them. All of this stuff, you cannot be the only person who can coach. And honestly, I would say 75% maybe of my coaches are better than me at even productivity. and each one of them is better than at me in some area. So, we have one guy who's way better than me in marketing, one guy who's way better than me in mindset, one girl who's better than me in productivity and systems. And then our head coach, Daniel, is better than me in most things. And you don't want to be the best coach on your team. If you're the best coach on your team, you're always going to hit that ceiling. And quite frankly, your clients are not being served. You need to go and hire people that can be better coaches than you. And you need to get over yourself and realize, like, first of all, you're not the greatest coach in the world. Like, you're just not. I'm sorry. And if you then can flip it and go, you know what, I am not the best, but I can hire people that are better than me, that's when your business can accelerate, man. Because if you're the coaching bottleneck, like, you have to be involved in everything. I know guys that have been like that, and their businesses like really took off, and then they hit a point where they just kept on thinking that their coaches were not good enough, and their turnover was so high, and their business self-destructed, man. And it was painful to watch because some of them were my friends.
You're so right that this applies not just to coaching businesses, but it applies to most businesses. I remember reading,
what doesn't it apply to?
Yeah.
Like Elon doesn't fly the rockets. Elon doesn't build the Teslas. Elon doesn't do the boring, like Elon doesn't do any of the things. He's involved in it, but he doesn't do the things. And, if he's not doing the things, why are you doing all the things?
Yeah. Elon is like, I heard somebody describe him as the best person at allocating capital. So he really knows, whether that's human capital or actual finance capital, he knows how to allocate it to the right places. Talk about systems. So one question I have as well related to scaling and hiring. How much do you think people should rely on systems versus procedures, let's say, or processes versus people? Something that I've always tried to do is make all of my processes idiot proof. And actually, sometimes that's to my detriment because I end up hiring people who aren't A players because I rely a lot on my systems. Is that something that you've ever found yourself, or maybe your clients do rely too much on systems and not getting the right people?
Yeah, it's a great question. Your question answered itself. And so that if you look at it, like, first of all, yes, building systems is very, very important because systems are breakable, but they're hard to break. People are people. They're going to have good days, bad days. They're going to forget things. And they're going to mess up the systems. However, if you hire A players, they're going to improve the systems. Remember, what we are going to do is hire people smarter than us. And if we do that correctly, they will build the business better than we can. That's the key thing here. So Steve Jobs, when he was alive, had a great quote, many great quotes, but this one is awesome. He said, we don't hire great people and tell them what to do. We hire great people so they tell us what to do. If you think about that, Steve Jobs was obviously the driver of the iPhone, but Johnny Ive, the designer of the iPhone that Steve Jobs hired, was probably more instrumental in the iPhone success than even Steve Jobs. And so it wasn't Steve Jobs was Apple, Apple was Steve Jobs, but look at how the business has continued to accelerate without him. And that's the position you have to get in. And you only get to that position if you hire A players. And the cool thing is, if you use systems, you will hire A players because even the interview process should be systematized. And the recruiting, there's people out there who are better at recruiting. So what we do in our business is we send all of our coaches, all of our clients, and even when we're looking for somebody, we go to people that are specialists and recruiters for digital marketing or for virtual assistants or for salespeople. And we have them do the work because they have the better systems and they're A players at hiring, and they bring us the best because we're not that good at it. It's not something that we have the expertise at. And so again, this is all about, here's your ego, the smaller it can get, and the more that you can always be around smarter people, the more that you can be the dumbest person in the room. And you're a smart person, right? Like, everybody listening to this is a smart person. But imagine you were the dumbest person in the room and everybody else around you was smarter, and you had the strength to set your ego aside and get help from them. Man, your business would explode. I don't know if do you know a guy named Charlie Johnson, who's an online coach?
Sounds familiar, probably.
Yeah, so Charlie Johnson was one of my coaching clients in 2023. He was one of my best coaching clients because every single morning I would wake up to like 5 WhatsApp questions from Charlie because he asked the most questions. He squeezed our coaching program dry of information because he got everything out of it. And most people don't go and ask the questions. They either don't know what to ask, their ego's too big to ask, or they're scared to ask. Yeah. But if you're in a coaching program, man, ask everything possible.
Yeah, agreed. One of the ideas in your book, you called it standards. I like to call it sort of identity shifting. I don't know if you would agree. Some people, they're afraid to ask questions because maybe they don't believe in themselves or they're telling themselves the wrong story. Is there an aspect of identity shifting that has to happen when people are working with you at all?
Identity shift is not something that we require, but it is naturally something that happens when they go through our coaching. Oftentimes, I mean, everybody here who's listening has a friend who says, I'm always late, or I can never lose weight, or I'm this, or I'm that. And you hear that all the time. And inside your brain, you might not say it to them, but inside your brain, you go, well, you're never going to be on time if all you ever say is I'm always late, right? Like that's your identity, is that you're always late, and your brain will find a reason to be congruent with that. So we first need to set up the systems that allow them to be on time. So in our book, the effortless discipline systems come first, is that until most people need to prove to themselves that they can do the thing that they never thought they could. And so whether that is, make videos or write a sales letter or make a sales call or whatever it is, if you follow the systems and you practice it, you will get good at it. And eventually you will start to succeed at it, which then allows you to make the identity shift that, hey, I can be on time. And then with enough confidence building up, you go, I'm the type of person who's always on time. And then you never need the systems anymore. It's kind of like training wheels on a bike. You need them at first, and then eventually you get so good, you can ride the bike without the training wheels. And eventually your identity gets so strong, you can run without the effortless discipline systems. Like, first thing that we talked about, what time do I get up? Well, I get up because my identity is I get up very early in the morning. I don't need an alarm clock because my body's wired to do it. I don't need the training wheels anymore. That's just what I do. And it's unnegotiable. So those are the things that are natural for every coaching client of ours to come in and eventually ascend to having higher standards through identity shift because of the effortless discipline systems that they put together.
Yeah, in my own experience, I find that people are really uncomfortable when it comes to finances. And of course, we take a lot of that off of their plate. And try to make it as effortless.
I have clients that won't even look at their finances because they don't want to know how bad it is. It's
yeah.
Come on.
I mean, if those clients are struggling, they should reach out. We can definitely help them turn it around because what I found is once things are getting better, you just enjoy looking at your finances, right?
Do you help people that are global North America or only in Canada?
We're expanding to the US. Right now, it's mostly in Canada.
Yeah, okay.
The idea behind my business is we get your books in order, but then the next step is we make you profitable by implementing profit first. It's a system that I coach about.
Yep. I know Mike.
Nice. Yeah. So that's been a big deal in my business, actually, because now I actually have something where I can help people improve their businesses and grow their profit and not just do the taxes or the compliance.
Sure.
Are there any other things that you find that commonly your clients are really uncomfortable doing, that they have to push through that discomfort that is maybe a little bit more unnatural for them?
Yeah, and we talk about it in the Dark Side of Discipline book, is that most people don't say no. They don't know how to say no. They don't have the strength and courage to say no. And because they say yes to everything, they end up so busy that they can't work on the great stuff. So if you want to do great things, you have to do fewer things. And how do you do fewer things? You say no. So as you become more successful, it's this catch-22, because when you're not successful, nobody wants your time. As you become more successful, everybody wants your time. And you really do want to help more people. So you're like saying yes to every little single thing, whether it's being on everybody's Instagram Live or everybody's podcast or everybody's YouTube channel, you're speaking at everybody's event. And I went through a phase where I did this. And I went through a phase where I did this because I didn't want to miss out on something. But you need to get to the point, and you need to have great clarity about your business, that you know what matters, that you run everything through a filter, and there's far more benefit to you saying yes to the thing than there is saying, and if it's not a, as the cliche goes, if it's not a heck yes, then it's a heck no. And so you need to build the parameters around that. Now, most people are big people pleasers, and therefore they say yes to everything. And then they end up by, unproductive. It's death by 1,000 cuts, right? Because if you try and say yes to everything, you never have time to write that book, to create that course, to really think big about the content you're putting out, which is going to get you the attention. So yeah, you might be busy and you might be pumping out content, but because you're just like doing content in like the 5 or 10 minutes you have, it's not great content. And you're like, man, they told me to post on Instagram and social media every single day, and I'm doing it. Yeah, but it's like mediocre content, and you don't have a big idea, and you're not contrarian enough. And that's why you don't stand out. And you're not any of those things because you say yes to everything. So you don't actually have enough time to really think big about the content you're putting out, which is why so many coaches and content creators struggle, because their activity level is sufficient, but the quality of it, and it's not like, oh, my lighting's bad. No, I mean like the quality of the idea. There's no bigness in the idea, and that's why they don't stand out. So this is common in every industry, every age, every gender. People just do not say no enough, and until they do, they're always going to find themselves spinning their wheels.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit into fatherhood, if
Yeah,
that's
totally,
okay with
man.
you.
Yeah, man, nothing's off
Yeah.
off the board. I love talking about this stuff.
So obviously, I'm about to have a child, and I've been thinking a lot about the types of values that I want to instill in my kid. I'll just give you a little bit of background about me. I grew up in sort of a comfortable family,
Uh-huh.
and as I was getting older, I had this sense of guilt that I didn't earn things for myself, and I started to push away a lot of the help that my parents were trying to give me. And
Mhm.
now that I'm going to be having a child soon, I'm thinking about the balance that is probably very difficult for parents to achieve of helping your kids. And like, to be fair, at the beginning of my career, my parents, it looked like I was going to fail pretty spectacularly. So I could understand why they really wanted to help. But at the
Uh-huh.
same time, I do think that there's something to be said about earning it for yourself and not feeling fulfilled if somebody hands you everything. So is it something that you've been thinking about now as a father as well, how to make sure that your own kids earn things and feel a sense of confidence that they can figure things out versus helping them too much?
A little bit, but I'm mostly concerned about them falling down the stairs right now. So I think so Daniel, you're getting way too far ahead of yourself, man. Like
Okay.
I understand where you're going with this, right? And we want to give them resilience. We want to give them confidence. We do think about that, and we spend time talking about that. My wife and I, we want them to question society and control, and we're going to homeschool our kids and all these lovely things. But the most important thing is that we are there for our kids, and they're gonna find their own way. And I was thinking about this the other day, is that almost every kid rebels against their parents in some way. Their parents are this way, so the child is going to end up seeing that and wanting to be different than that. There are so many things outside of our control, but all we can control is really being there for our kids and giving them an environment in which they can flourish. That's a healthy environment. That is an environment where there's we do everything we possibly can to avoid big T trauma and little T trauma. And that is really, really important, because that's where they end up, with problems in adulthood, is when they have either, I grew up with a lot of little T trauma, in that my father was an alcoholic, and, did he hit me? No. So I didn't have any big T trauma, but, I saw a lot of stuff. I saw my father in a state that I didn't want to see him in. My parents had a horrible marriage, but they stayed together forever. And it was just, it was a lot of embarrassment. And, that kind of messed me up in certain ways, so just, obviously it's very much like what I talk about in the Dark Side of Discipline book, is that the addition of things is beneficial up to a point, and then it's really making sure that the catastrophic negatives are the things that we really must focus on helping our children avoid. So that's where a lot of my mental energy goes to, is like, are my kids safe, and am I making sure that there's going to be no catastrophic errors here? And provided they have that, like, they're their own people, and just
Yeah.
like the way that you kind of rebelled, even though, the situation sounds pretty good, like, they have a mind of their own. So at the end of the day, the fact that you're thinking about that is very important. And I think that over time, first of all, you got to get the kid to, like, make sure that they can talk and walk, and, like, let's focus on that first. And then once they get to that point, you can really, that's when the conversation that you want to have is going to be much more powerful and potent. Like, but, so our kid, we were talking about languages before, because you grew up bilingual. My 3-year-old is fluent in Spanish and English, and she can flip, just like that, because our nannies all speak Spanish.
Right.
And we, the kids were born in Mexico, and we gave them a second passport. So, that we moved to Mexico to have our children from Canada for a couple of reasons, mostly about getting the second passport. So we're trying to set our kids up for success with these things, and also getting them to think differently. And so that's what is most important. And again, the bottom line is that the fact that you are thinking about this means that they're so much further ahead than most people.
Hopefully. How about yourself? I imagine that as you had kids and you got married and you became a husband and a father, that your priorities changed, and probably systems needed to also adjust to the new priorities. How would you say your systems have changed from before you had kids and after?
It's just, my days generally look the same. I spend a lot less time on stuff that, is that would be looked upon as selfish. Like, I go to the gym less, I still go to the gym enough, but I go to the gym less, shorter times, and I just give more of my time to to my wife and kids. And other than that, I had been thinking about setting up these systems for so long. I'd coached so many people that I saw what was right, what was wrong, and I knew exactly how I wanted things to go. And then it was just pretty easy to plug and play and make sure that it happened.
We're trying to think about our own systems, how we're going to be setting them up. You talked about, I don't think you talked about this in the book, but in another podcast maybe, how you set up a different schedule for yourself and for your wife so that everybody can get good sleep. And
yeah, totally.
We're trying to think about those systems as well. And everybody's telling us that you can plan as much as you want, but once the baby comes, your plan's going to go out the window. I'm curious.
I don't necessarily think that, but I think that, like, you have no idea the health of the baby, and the baby could be colicky. The baby, I had a friend whose baby didn't have, it's nothing long-term health-wise, but the baby couldn't sleep lying down for 3 or 6 months. So he and his wife had to take turns holding the baby on their chest at night. And okay, so that's a plan that, you can't think of. But in most cases, provided your baby is on a regular and normal wavelength, like, the baby is generally going to sleep a lot for the first several weeks. And in fact, like, the first several weeks when we had our first kid, nothing changed that much because we had a daytime nanny. And I think, like, every father, like, buy your wife's time back, so daytime nanny and a nighttime nanny was called a night nurse. And after 2 weeks, like, everybody says, like, yeah, no, we're fine. Like, after 2 weeks, everybody says, oh my God, yeah, we just got a night nurse. And night nurse might be 3 times per week so that you're able to sleep, and the night nurse can do the feeding. And then during the daytime, even a couple days per week for like 4 to 6 hours, especially if your wife is breastfeeding, she doesn't have time to take a shower. The baby is attached to her 24 hours a day. Like, give your wife some time to herself, like, to maybe go and do exercise. And especially, like, my wife had a C-section, so she had to do some rehab training. Well, if she was, if we didn't have any help, it would have been very difficult for her to do that. Honestly, 3 kids under 3, like, one kid's a joke, man. Like, one kid's barely harder than having a dog. And now it's going to seem very difficult to you, but at first, provided, like, listen, if it's really hard on parents who have no family and who are unable to afford support. Listen, man, I said to my wife multiple times, I just can't understand how, normal people do this. Like, normal people being, like, people who have factory jobs. I don't understand. Like, it's very, very difficult. But if you can buy back your family's time, like, for yourself and for your wife, you have to. It's unconscionable that you wouldn't. So getting some help is absolutely essential, and that will make things a lot better. And because you can be tired and your wife can be tired, but you can't be tired at the same time. If you are tired at the same time, the smallest thing will lead to a fight, and it's not worth it. So make sure that, you have your sleep schedules set up differently. We're useless generally as fathers to the child. The child needs the mom. The mom has the food, and the child naturally wants to be with the mom. And we're pretty much useless. But of course, we can be helpful by making sure our wife is taken care of, by cleaning the bottles, all that sort of stuff. But we're not the one who the baby wants, and that's okay. So, we have a role that we can do in there, and, just trying to make sure that your wife gets a little bit of sleep whenever you possibly can. I get up in the middle of the night. My wife and I know our sleep schedules. She needs more sleep than I do. I get up in the middle of the night. I don't really care. And we just figure that stuff out as quickly as possible so that we avoided that both being tired at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice, and help supporting your wife and making sure that she gets her time back. I think that's really, really good advice.
Yeah. And I mean, buy more diapers than you need, pack more onesies than you ever think you need. And because there will always be a time when you forget to bring enough.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think, especially in today's world where we're constantly fed so much information, I feel like I don't have enough time in the day to consume all of the content that I would want to consume, like educational content, and just to move me forward. And in my world, so we're both in Canada, we've got an election coming up. We don't need to talk about who you're voting for or anything like that, but I am curious how you make sure that you're not distracted by all of that stuff that's going on while still maybe staying informed, because in today's day and age, it feels...
Honestly, I don't stay informed.
At all?
No.
All right.
I just don't care. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Because it's not within my control.
How about things like changing the changing economic conditions versus, or even AI? Has that changed the way that you do business at all? The way that you maybe coach clients? Is that something that you're thinking about at all in the future?
We have a coach on our team who specializes in AI stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we make sure we have a guy who's like, his job is to figure out like what's important for people to know. I think people mostly go overboard with this stuff, and they get into the weeds, and I'm a big 80-20 person. Like 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. So let's not get so far down into the weeds where you're spending so much time on AI that you're actually less productive than you used to be. There are some copywriters will tell me that AI can do a good job, and then the majority of copywriters say, I've never seen anything that's better than a human copywriter yet. It's accelerating at a very fast pace. I personally don't use it. So I'm like Henry Ford. So Henry Ford, back in the day when he was running, the Ford Automotive Company, they were grilling him about like, not knowing some specific information. He said, I just have a button on my desk that if I need that information, I just press a button and the person comes in and tells me it. And that's the way that I look at it. Like, my job is just to think and not to get caught up in the weeds of AI. And I think a lot of people are way caught up. Like, everybody's on this trend right now of, posting Simpson picture versions of themselves. And it's like, okay, great. Like, you learned how to make a Simpson version picture of yourself on AI. But again, you still don't have any good ideas. Like, all you're doing is, most people, most books and most experts, all they're doing is rehashing something that they learned from Alex Hormozy. And it's like, well, okay, but have you actually had an original thought? And that's, again, you can post all the Simpson picture versions of your content that you want, but you don't have an original thought. So your stuff is never going to take off. And that's the
Right.
cold, hard truth.
Right. But you do have somebody on your team that is starting to teach people about how to leverage AI, it sounds like.
Yeah, totally.
Nice. All right. One of the things that I commonly see in the coaching industry, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit.
Yeah, man.
And I've had this discussion with some of my clients, is paid in fulls or PIFs.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if you've seen clients struggle with this thing, and it's more of a finance related question. If somebody's constantly trying to sell a paid in full, so let's say a program that lasts 6 months, and somebody pays in full $12,000 for that program. I think coaches don't really understand the difference between earned revenue versus cash collected. And one of the common things that I've seen people do is spend that money in the first month or two, and then not have enough left to pay the people to fulfill the service for the rest of the term. So I'm wondering, have you seen that with your own clients? Is that something that you ever talk about with clients?
Honestly,
Not so
no.
much.
No,
All right.
because again, like, most of our clients aren't actually coaches anymore.
Okay.
Because like, look, honestly, like, if someone is that stupid and doing that, like, I don't want you as a client, which is why my business focuses on, real businesses. We have financial services, we have construction owners, like, we have companies that are doing like 10 or 15 million bucks in real world businesses where you can't make that kind of mistake. And so honestly, nobody's ever said that to me before. I can believe that people would do that, because people go into debt for a lot of time, but it's honestly really stupid. Like if you're doing that, you are a stupid person with money. And as long as you learn, if somebody is listening to this and they do that, as long as you learn the first time and you don't do it again, you're not that stupid, right? You were just like a little bit naive or whatever. You just fell off the turnip truck or whatever it is. Like, get back. Everybody makes mistakes. But if you do it repeatedly, then you are pretty stupid. And honestly, I don't have like a whole lot of hope.
You'd be surprised at how much I've seen it crash and burn because of that problem. Because it would take a while before you even realize that you make a mistake. You'd be getting PIFs every single month, and then just one day you're going to realize that you can't keep up that same level of getting people to pay in full, and you still have to fulfill the service for everybody that did. So it could be a while.
I've always been a very conservative person with my money. 6 months, minimum 6 months of money in the bank to run the business. And when COVID hit, like, I had no stress, because we had a ton of money in the bank. And even if any of my gyms or any of my businesses had a hard time, there's still enough money to get through 6 months, and we figure it out. So I've always been a conservative person around the business side of the money. And again, so like, the bottom line is, like, you should be able to figure this out pretty quickly. And when you do get bit by it, you go to a person like you, and you're going to solve the problem for it. And then just don't make the same mistake again. Like, everybody's allowed to make a mistake, but if you make the same mistake repeatedly, then, you're probably doing something else.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any other mistakes or common pitfalls that you see? It doesn't necessarily need to be finance related, but like across the industries?
Totally. Like, hey, a lot of people have middle class mindset, right? So they have middle class mindset, which means they do everything themselves. And so, even my good friend and mentor Bedros Keuilian, he's very successful, and he's probably coached a lot of people that come to you. He years ago, his wife needed a sprinkler fixed, and what's it cost to fix a sprinkler? Like $150, right? If you get somebody in, the part and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it myself. And so he delegated a sales call for a $5,000 program to his assistant. And obviously she didn't make the sale. So he lost out on $5,000 to go and fix the sprinkler. And that's a really extreme example of how most business owners are doing everything themselves. They're doing their bookkeeping, right? They're doing their bookkeeping before they come to you. They're doing their video editing. And for the long time, I struggled to get people to stop doing it and delegate to a professional like yourself. And then I figured out a way to explain it to them. Okay, it's like, hey, Johnny, you do bookkeeping in your business and video editing. Okay, why don't you come and work for me and I'll hire you to do my bookkeeping and my editing. And how long would you last working for me? Like 30 minutes. I'd be like, you're so bad at this. Like, you're horrible at video editing and bookkeeping. And yet, Johnny, you're doing bookkeeping and editing for the most important business in your world, which is your own. And nobody would hire you to do bookkeeping or video editing. And yet you're doing it. And so when I started saying that to people were like, yeah, you're right. And finally, they were more open to delegating. And so with bookkeeping, anybody who's listening to this and is not using you, do it, right? And anybody who's doing their own video editing or writing their own copy or setting their own calls or whatever it is, go to assistantly.com. Go to assistantly.com. My friend Lath owns the company. He will find you a unicorn. That's what he does. He has found unicorns for so many of my clients, from virtual assistants to email copywriters to people to do DM setting, to people to run your TikTok and Instagram, to people that do outbound calls. He even has hired us full-time salespeople. Most of them are global, like not American, and they work overnight. And they work overnight, full-time hours for us, and they're better than our North American people, especially at following instructions.
Is that because they have a good training program for them, or they just find the good people?
They're just good people. They're just good people. We have 100 calls per day outbound for our setters, and most of our North American people still only do 80 a day, and our people from assistantly.com do 200 a day.
Wow.
And they memorize the script in 48 hours. Like, they're just hungrier. They're hungry people. And, obviously there's people around the world that are not hungry, but they do the vetting of it, and they find us people that are hungrier than most of our North American people. Yeah, man. Awesome.
Anytime you recommend a software or a website, I'm listening very attentively, because in your book, you talked about Opal.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I downloaded it and I am telling everybody about that thing. Is that something that you personally use as well?
No, I don't.
No?
But, our head coach, Daniel, does. And so it's OPAL, has 4 million downloads on Apple or the iTunes, whatever, the App Store. And I don't use any apps. That's why I'm like, I don't use AI. I don't use apps. I'm like from the 19... And so, but all I do is think and read. And so the Opal app blocks you from using your phone and getting distracted and stuff like that. And I just have my systems. Again, like, I'm 50 years old. I'm not like 23 years old and just starting business. So I've been doing things a certain way for nearly 25 years, longer than like probably 20 or 30% of your listeners have been alive. I've been doing the things. And so I have a very ingrained set of habits and routines that keep me on track, that I don't need the fancy schmancy stuff. And so, but the Opal app is tremendous for people that just use their phone too much when they should be focused. And you can set it up to block whatever you want, and away you go. And like you said, it's been helpful, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I like about it is I actually use my phone quite a bit for work, so the lines can get a little bit blurry. And the screen time native feature in the Apple software, it doesn't work the same way. What I like about Opal is that it allows you to tell it which apps are distracting and which apps are productive. And then you can actually measure your productivity. I'm all about measure growth.
Okay. Got it.
So I love the fact that I can track that kind of information.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. And I'm so glad that it's been helpful to you, because, for Daniel, my co-author, like, it was a game changer for him, and it really kept him out of trouble at nighttime when he was supposed to be with his family. And, sometimes he was on his phone, but now he doesn't have that anymore. And in the mornings, he crushes his to-do list because he's so productive and focused.
Yeah. How about you? Do you track anything in your own life? Any habits? Not at all, huh?
I manually track my sleep because Aura rings already tell me I'm horrible at sleeping. But the Aura doesn't know that I have 3 kids. I just manually track like some of the sleep stuff, and that's about it. Because again, for many years I did. And so I know exactly what nutrition I need to stick to, that I don't have to track it anymore. I could estimate probably within 100 calories of how many calories I consume every single day, just by my knowledge of nutrition. Because, before I started coaching, I used to be in the fitness and nutrition space before apps. And when you had to either weigh it or estimate it. So I've got that stuff figured out, and that's it. That's all I really track. And then obviously the numbers in the business, which I keep
The
an eye
numbers
on.
in the business, yeah. Are there specific numbers that you help your clients keep track of? Are there things that you tell them they should be measuring at all times?
Well, it's so broad in our client base, right? So we have
Right.
real estate agents, we have construction company owners, we have gym owners. And so, I think one of the most important things for the people listening is making sure you know what your cost per customer acquisition is. Because then if you know what your cost per acquisition is, then you're probably not getting into the trouble of spending all your money when you get a new customer, because you will also respect that money more. I think when people get into trouble of like the paid in fulls is that there's no connection to like how much effort, energy, and money went into getting it, right? When getting a new customer is a novel experience, you don't make the connection, and therefore you don't respect that paid in full. And I think that's something that, it takes a little bit of experience, and, the novelty of getting the paid in fulls has to wear off. And then you need to become, get better emotional regulation around running a business, so that you don't think you've won the lottery when you got a $12,000 paid in full and, act so foolish. So I think that having the customer acquisition cost is something that in almost every business, every industry, is going to be very important and is going to drive a lot of the decisions that you make after that.
Yeah. One of the ways that we've helped our clients with those paid in fulls is by setting up profit first, but in a very specific system to coaches. So we always make sure that they're setting aside enough so that they can pay for the fulfillment and whatever other things that they need to make sure that it's set aside for. That's with the profit first system. Is there anything that you do
Profit
that's
First is such a
similar?
great system, and what you guys are doing with that is really fantastic. Sorry, would you finish up there?
I was curious if you do anything to separate cash in your own business or maybe even in your personal life, so that you have clarity over how much cash you have for the different needs that you have.
No, I don't. I just have a lot of cash. I mean,
At some point,
when you have a lot, it's just, okay, I got a lot. So,
you'd be surprised.
And we don't spend a lot of money. We're not crazy. We don't live a crazy high life. And so I just know that there's more than enough. And also, I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, that's fair. Can you tell me a little bit about what people can expect if they work with you in your program or work with your team?
Yeah. So what we generally do is we work with profitable businesses, but the entrepreneur is a little bit disorganized, not as productive as they want to be, doesn't have the business running in an organized way with standard operating procedures and systems and all that sort of stuff. And so we first of all, we figure out the clarity. You want to know exactly their orientation. Where do you want to get to? What's stopping you from getting there? Then we look at the opportunity for leverage in the business. So we use a clear system: clarity, leverage, elimination, accountability, and results. And so the clarity, most people are really reactive. And so they are not operating on a state of proactivity, because they don't have clarity about what they want. They kind of know they want to get rich, but they don't have a really, really, really deep sense of clarity about what really matters, what doesn't. We need to know that first before we move ahead. For example, like one of our clients, he does about $3 million in coaching B2B salespeople. And he's thinking that in order to get $10 million, he wants to get to $10 million. And he's seeing all these people do online challenges. So he's spent, the last month going down the rabbit hole of online challenges. I was questioning him over and over again, like, why do you think this is the way to get to $10 million? Like, tell me. And then I finally broke him, because I said, what exactly do you want the business to look like in 12 months? What's your ideal client? What's your ideal day? What's your perfect week look like? Tell me more about this. And then by him answering that, he realized like an online challenge is not the way of doing things, but he wasted all the time. So it's like, we got to get that clarity first, because otherwise, if you don't have clarity about where you are and where you want to get to, you're going to go off on these dangerous detours, and you're going to be, doing. That's why I wrote The Dark Side of Discipline. You're going to be doing personal discipline challenges that do nothing for you or your business. It's just to follow the crowd. Well, follow the crowd and you're going to end up in a bad place. On the flip side is, once you have the clarity, it's easy to say no. right? We talked earlier about people don't say no enough. It's because they don't have clarity on what matters. So we get the clarity. Then we know what to leverage. There's leverage of people. There's leverage of other people's money. There's leverage of other people's customers. What are the greatest leverage points? And again, I'm a huge proponent of the 80-20 principle. If you haven't read the book 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch, and you are a serious business owner, then go and read that. Like if you haven't made your first 500,000, it's probably not the right book for you. You know, spend your time on Alex Hormozi's books, Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson. Those are the books you should read. But if you're getting up to a couple $1,000,000, you really need to invest in the 80-20 principle, because, you know, when you get successful, you could do 1,000,000 things because you have the capital to do 1,000,000 things. You know, that's a surefire way to get into a lot of trouble. Instead, what you need to do is dial back and go, what's really working? Let's go and put more money into that and leverage it. And then elimination. So we do the automate, delegate, and eliminate. You know, there's a lot of stuff we need to eliminate totally. Nobody needs to be doing it. And we take a look at both personal and professional side. The delegation, what's not your job. So everybody that's listening to this is doing stuff that's not their job. And even learning is not, like listening to training videos is not my job. So I will hire college students to go and now, like, the Zoom AI is amazing. Like, for its summarizing things. I haven't found an AI that does it well enough for YouTube videos. It gives you pretty generic stuff. But I would hire college kids. Like, I'd buy a course and I'd give a college kid my course that I bought and I'd say, summarize this. I do not have 30 hours to go and watch this thing.
Right.
And they would do it and they would come back and they would learn and they'd bring me the stuff. So even learning is not my job. I can delegate that. So what's not your job inside of your business, and then what's not your job outside of your business? So your job is not to do laundry. So you can hire a laundry service like Popply or it's Poppy or something like that. You know, it's $1 a pound. They come and pick it up at your house. They drop it back off. You know, you should not be doing your meal prep. You know, there's meal prep services out there. There's everything that can save you time there. You shouldn't be cleaning your house. You shouldn't be mowing your lawn. You shouldn't be doing any of that stuff if you want to grow your business. So that needs to be eliminated. And a lot of that is, you know, head trash. People need to get over that head trash of like spending money on stuff that they normally do. But when you spend $20 an hour to get someone else to cut your lawn, you should be making $200 or $500 in that hour so that you get a 10x return. So that's the type of stuff that we really have to help people with. And then even within their business, they have people hired that are not working to full capacity because the entrepreneur is often doing that person's job, whether it's doing sales calls or doing the email copy that they've hired somebody else to do. They need to spend more time training that person, bringing them up to the next level and trusting them. So trust is a big thing. And then the accountability. This is what's a missing link from anybody changing in life. You need accountability to somebody you deeply do not want to disappoint. Accountability is someone you deeply do not want to disappoint. That will make you move mountains in your life. If you have a goal, you don't tell anyone, you're the easiest person to let down. So that's why you're not hitting it. But if you have a goal, you hire a coach, you tell them that, and you don't want to disappoint them, you will do everything and follow through and achieve those results. And then finally, it's the results. And the results come from that 80-20 principle. And we spend a lot of time going through and 80-20ing people's businesses, again, to find 80% of your sales, your efforts are coming from 20% of your efforts. So for example, there's 5 social medias that are big, right? TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. And most coaches and course creators get so hung up in thinking they have to do all 5 that they neglect the fact that there's one that's getting them 80% of their sales. And you shouldn't strengthen your weaknesses. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of slightly stronger, crappy weaknesses. Instead, you should kill them. The strength is in killing the other 4 and putting exponentially more effort into the one that is generating your results. That's what you need to do. And that's how your business will grow much faster than you trying to get better at your god-awful LinkedIn, right? And so that type of stuff is the mindset that we get people hooked around. So those are the things that we work with, and we do it really, really fast. If somebody signed up today, they've already had a welcome call, and they're going to have their first coaching call, not on the weekend, but, it's a Friday that we're doing this video. Over the weekend, they have some homework to do. On Monday, they'll have their first call, and they'll have huge results in the first 4 days of the program. Because
amazing.
That's, we just streamlined it as much as possible through the systems, because the faster you can get anybody results, and, a lot of people listening to this are in the fitness industry, I'm sure, the faster you can get somebody results, the more that they're going to have the momentum and motivation to come back and get results. I learned that as a personal trainer. You have to get results fast. Otherwise, people get grumpy.
100%. Yeah, I learned the same thing. Oftentimes when we're implementing profit first into somebody's business, and we do forecasting with that. So like we're showing them a clear picture of where they're going to go if they keep these same habits. So oftentimes just having that forecast and then making some tweaks already gives them that reward that they feel like they're making those changes, and then keeps the momentum going. Before we finish off, you mentioned something about, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it got me thinking that I wanted to recommend an AI to you. Have you ever heard of Notebook LM?
No.
So my sister told me about this. She's in university right now, and she uses it. Basically, you can upload a bunch of documents, or like if you need to read through a bunch of things, and it'll turn it into a podcast with two people talking to each other, and you could join the podcast and ask questions, and then it'll answer your questions. So she often does that to learn her notes at university. And
that's fascinating.
Yeah, I highly recommend checking it out if you feel like listening is an easier way for you to learn, and you want to find something that's going to make it condensed, then highly recommend it. All right, Craig, before we finish, where can people find you?
Yeah, so Instagram at Real Craig Ballantyne, and then grab the book, darksideofdiscipline.com, or go to Amazon for the ebook, audiobook, and the paperback.
And all the other books as well. They're all amazing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Craig. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, that was awesome, Daniel.